Look carefully in the bottom right-hand corner. I know there are lots of people here, but there's somebody waving at you.
Yes.
That's Sue. Over to Sue.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for giving me your time today. I'd like to start by thanking anybody who already supports the charity Mary's Meals. Your kindness and generosity are changing the lives of children around the world. For those who've never heard of Mary's Meals before, I'm just really grateful to have this opportunity to talk about the work today. Slide 2.
Sorry, there will be slide 2 soon.
That's it, lovely. So I'm going to tell you a short story, and like most good stories, it begins in a pub. It was a cold and dark evening in November 1992. Two brothers, Magnus and Macfarlane Barrow, they were having a pint together in their local village pub in Dalmally in Scotland, and the conversation turned to what they'd seen on the television earlier in the evening. This had been a report from the suffering of the people in Bosnia who had fled the ethnic cleansing that we were all only too familiar with, and they were now being housed in refugee camps. The brothers, who had previously visited Bosnia on a family holiday, felt compelled to help. So they decided to appeal for aid, blankets and food from their local community. They hurriedly organised some time off work. They were both fish farmers at the time, and they sourced a second-hand Land Rover. And barely 3 weeks after that conversation in the pub, the brothers found themselves in Bosnia as part of an aid convoy. Magnus and Fergus safely delivered the aid and returned home to their day jobs. However, to their surprise, the donations had continued to pour in, and their dad's old shed was now full of provisions. Magnus took a gap year to deliver the aid, and it's probably the longest gap year in history, as he never returned to his previous job. The donations didn't stop, they still haven't, and so in 1992 the work was registered as a charity named Scottish International Relief. The next one, please. The Scottish International Relief took a new turn in 2002, when Magnus visited Malawi and the country was in the grip of famine. It was here that he met Emma, a mother who was dying and was surrounded by her children. Emma was lying on a straw mat. She was wrapped in an old blanket and wringing her hands continuously as she spoke. She whispered to Magnus, "There's nothing left now except to pray that someone will look after my children when I'm gone." Emma's husband had died a year previously, killed by AIDS, the same disease that was now about to steal her from her children. Magnus tried to lift the atmosphere by asking 14-year-old Edward, Emma's eldest child, what his hopes and ambitions were. And Magnus did not expect that the response would change his life, the lives of more than 2 million others. In this photograph, just behind the pillar, is the Edward who has changed so many lives. Thank you. Edward replied, "I would like to have enough to eat, and I'd like to be able to just go to school one day." This was a call that could not be ignored, and it led to the evolution of Scottish International Relief into Mary's Meals as it is today. The shed where Magnus and his family stored the donations all those years ago, and you could see Magnus standing in the door of that shed, remains the global headquarters for Mary's Meals today. Hunger remains the #1 health risk in the world today, and it tragically kills more people than AIDS, malaria, and TB together. 200 million children's lives are at risk because they're malnourished, and more than 64 million primary school children are out of school around the world. Instead of sitting in the classroom, children are working in the fields, begging on the street corners, and scavenging amongst the rubbish just to find enough food to survive. Today, too many children wake up and go to bed hungry, and I don't think that's right. I don't think you think that's right, and that's why I'm here this afternoon. Our vision at Mary's Meals is that every child receives one daily meal in their place of education, and that all those who have more than they need share with those who lack even the most basic of things. Working together with these who share our vision, we believe there is no good reason why this can't be realised. At the heart of Mary's Meals lies a simple idea that can transform the lives of millions of people around the world. Providing a child with one daily meal in their place of education not only feeds their body, it also feeds their mind and provides families with a greater incentive to enrol their children in school. We believe that education is essential for breaking the cycle of poverty. Children receiving Mary's Meals today can grow up well-nourished and well-educated to become the man or woman who will lift their communities out of poverty and end their reliance on aid. Mary's Meals is now feeding hungry children living in 20 countries across the globe, and we are reaching out to the world's poorest children who have no other safety net. Just looking at the map there, it's just amazing to me personally to see how the charity has grown and how many more countries that we're feeding than when we started. We had a little discussion here earlier about Haiti, which is up there on the left, above the sign for Ecuador. Incredible poverty in that part of the world. And Mary's Meals is working very hard there to help alleviate that. Thank you. Mary's Meals is not only a powerful incentive to come to school, the daily meal also gives children the energy to learn and to play. When Mary's Meals started at a school, our research shows that hunger is reduced and there is improved school enrolment and attendance levels. Improved attainment, increased community support for education, and the children are just happier, which is what we would all want. Our research shows that Mary's Meals reduces children's hunger at school. In Malawi, the percentage of children who said they felt hungry most of the time or always reduced from 42% to 1% and after 1 year of receiving Mary's Meals. 3 years after the introduction of the programme in Zambia, 98% of the children told us that they had more energy after eating Mary's Meals porridge. At Mary's Meals, we have a great belief in the power of porridge. What you have to remember is that this charity started in Scotland. Our research shows that enrolment increases in schools where Mary's Meals provides school meals, and surrounding communities report fewer children being out of school. In Malawi, enrolment increased by 39% in schools we surveyed, and in the first 3 years of the Mary's Meals programme. The porridge is the basic name that is given to any local produce that provides the one daily meal that the children have. It's not always porridge, it can be a grain or a wheat-based product that they grow locally. Thank you. In many of the countries where we work, girls are often less likely to go to school. Girls are also disproportionately affected by safety risks in travelling to school and early pregnancy and marriage. Yet we can proudly say that around 50% of all the children we feed are girls. By providing a daily meal at school, we encourage the girls to access education and enable them to concentrate and learn once they're there, so that there can be a brighter future for them and their communities. I'm reminded of David's information in your talk earlier about the lady who's coming from Africa to do her PhD, is it?
MSc.
MSc. So yes, so these wonderful things do happen. Thank you. Oh, no, wait a sec. While the majority of our programs support children in primary schools, we also feed in preschool education facilities. In many of these places we work, these are referred to as early childhood development centres, and we would call them nurseries. Preschool children are particularly vulnerable to malnutrition and can suffer its effects in later life. As we all know, early intervention for disadvantaged children has been proven to lead to increased survival rates and better health, growth and brain development. Children who receive assistance in their early years are more successful at school and as adults have a higher employment rate and better health. We're beginning to see a new generation, once fed by Mary's Meals, finding its voice, and we call them Generation Hope. These are the young people who have completed their education and are going on to become doctors, teachers, and professional athletes. If you have a look on YouTube and you just put in Mary's Meals Generation Hope, there's a really uplifting film which will introduce you to these children who have made such good progress. The films are, there's 3 or 4 different films, but they're a very inspiring watch. These inspirational women, go on to the next one, I think. Yeah. These inspirational young women, Angelina and Mary, received Mary's Meals at school and are now working as auxiliary nurses in South Sudan. Mary told us, without Mary's Meals, we could not have continued. We would have given up. Angelina and I are proud of ourselves and our achievements, that we can be role models for our own children. So at Mary's Meals, we work extremely hard to keep the running costs low and ensure that at least 93% of the donations goes directly to the charitable activities. This is only possible because most of the work is done by an army of dedicated volunteers like me in developed countries and like this wonderful woman out in one of the school areas. Our school feeding programme are owned by the community and run by the local volunteers, with the money from Mary's Meals providing the basic food. Again, in some of these inspirational films, you see the community walking 2 miles down a mountain, and I have to say it is the women, collecting the food, putting it on their heads and carrying it back 2 miles up the mountain before cooking it and giving it to the children. It's quite staggering and wonderful. It costs just £15.90 to provide a child with Mary's Meals every school day for a whole year. That's approximately 8p a meal. Wow. So I'm just going to tell you about the different ways in which you could get involved in the work. You could choose to fundraise for Mary's Meals. Our supporters never fail to amaze us with the inspiring and original ideas, including a 9-year-old Madison Burns pictured, sorry, can we go on to the next one? Thank you. Madison Burns pictured on the left, who hiked for 5 days, reaching the summit of 5 of the highest mountains in the UK, raising £700 for Mary's Meals. Maybe you could take a sponsored cycle or organise a fundraiser in your local community. By raising funds for us, you could help Mary's Meals make a lasting difference to the lives of some of the children in the world's most poorest communities. Or you could choose to volunteer, as I do. We welcome everyone into the Mary's Meals family and believe each of us has something to contribute towards the realisation of our vision. During the pandemic, there was very little that we could do. Here in Abingdon, Our Lady in St Edmunds Parish has been absolutely brilliant in supporting Mary's Meals. And I did it, that's me, I did a 250-mile run in very small bits, maybe 4 or 5 kilometres a day. But I did do 250 miles, and the parish were very good in supporting me with that. And then we did it at a time where the government matched our appeal, and we raised £6,500. So it really was a parish and friends and family that helped to get that going. So that was really good. I think I'd quite like to be able to do a bit more running. I'm having trouble walking at the moment. There we are. Okay, thank you. Or you could make a donation. If you're a UK taxpayer, please consider signing the gift aid form, which allows us to claim at no extra cost to yourself the extra 25% from the government. Stephen Clark from Leeds donates monthly to Mary's Meals by direct debit, and he's told us that a regular donation helps keep me organised. It's a relief to know that the money is always going to those who need it, providing help to some of the world's poorest children. And I know that at the moment, times are very hard for very many people. It's very hard for our own children here in this country. We're surrounded by people who are suffering from poverty and all sorts of difficulties. However, generally speaking, most children do have some form of food in this country. That doesn't make it any easier. But £15.90, as I say, can feed one child in one of these areas for a whole year. You can find much more information and resources about our work on the website, which is where you can also find the films that I was telling you about. And thank you very much to David for inviting me and for listening to me today. It's always a great pleasure to talk about this wonderful charity. Mary is the mother of Jesus Mary, in case you wonder why it's called that. Magnus and his family went out to Bosnia, to Medjugorje, where there is a shrine to Our Lady of Medjugorje, and they always had a very strong faith in Mary. And during the running of this charity, if you talk to Magnus, as I've done, he never underestimates the power of prayer. So a lot of the time, Providence has hit in when they've been at a low. Through the pandemic, they managed to feed all the children in their homes, as opposed to everything closing down. So it's a charity that I have a great faith in, and I hope you've enjoyed the talk. Thanks very much.
Questions?
Yes, one of the problems with sending money to Africa, making sure that some of it doesn't end up in somebody's back pocket, and you seem to be providing money, but really you're providing the food pretty directly.
Yes.
You have
Exactly.
control
Completely
how the money
directly.
is spent.
The governance is extremely strong. It's one of the footnotes of the charity that the governance is overseen very carefully, and that the food is purchased and taken, that the local people don't have the money, they have the food. So the food is purchased by the charity, and on the ground they have local people who then deliver the food on wagons, and as I say, the women then put it on their head in huge bags and carry it up mountains.
Apart from the porridge, can you say anything else about the food? Do they have beans or meat?
They do. Well, they will have what is local to the area. In India, they have very rice-based products with high protein food added to them. In other parts of the world, where whatever the local grain is and whatever local foods are made, pulses and foods that people are local to them. So it's just this is the size of the cup that the children have. Again, I didn't show a film today because I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but when you see the film and you see the children coming with their cups and getting their porridge and sitting and eating it, and they're just wonderful. So as I said, I'm not giving you homework, but if you do have a chance to just look up one of the films, so it's really inspiring, a good way to end your day, really. They're very inspiring. I've got some magazines here which I've left. They will tell you how you can contribute if you'd like to. And I can leave a few which you might like to hand out to people who aren't actually here today.
Very happy to. Thank you. Any other questions, perhaps from the screen? You're muted, ladies and gentlemen. Please unmute yourselves if you'd like to say something. We'd like you to say something. That
was very, very interesting. Thank you very much for a very fascinating talk. It's quite overwhelming what you're doing, and it's brilliant, basically.
I mean, there's room to do similar things in this country, and I think there are young people and young charities within this country in every town we can look at who are just going, you know, we need to feed the kids in this school during the summer holidays, and they're just getting on and doing it. So this goodness and this love for our children is completely everywhere. But in Africa, we need to help support them to do it. Yeah. So thank you very much.
That sort of begs the question. I mean, is it possible for Mary's Meals to do what it does in the UK? Well, I think it probably is, but I think when you look at the statistics, the need is probably just greater elsewhere. As simple as that, really. Yeah. And you're around the world, aren't you? It's not just Africa. Yeah, that's right. It's all across the world. Yeah. Yes, that is very important. It's good. Last summer, they used to have something called the Backpack Project, where children would
bring, that's the Deadman School they did it, they would bring in old backpacks and fill them with pencils, rubbers, towel, flip-flops, specific stuff. And then the backpacks went off to Dalmally, and then they shipped to Africa. And my own grandchildren actually put together a lot of this, but they've had to stop doing it because the cost of freighting things out has just gone over the top. So now they can really only just concentrate on the food.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Sue? Thoughts? If not, I'd like to say, do sit down, Sue. Relax. I'll stand over here so you can sort of actually I'll look at that camera, which is the one which is working. I think that was a fantastic talk. Thank you ever so much for coming to tell us about Mary's Mills. Just to let people know why, it was at a Rotary conference, actually. There I was doing my thing at the last Rotary conference, and this amazingly powerful and inspiring lady bounced up to me and said, David, have you heard about Mary's Meals? And I said, I think so, but I don't really remember much about it. Tell me more. And she said, well, here's a leaflet. Oh, and you're going to be president of the club, aren't you? Can I come to your club? Absolutely. So here she is. It was Providence, I think, as she said. And we can thank Providence for everything. But I think we should thank Sue particularly for the wonderful work she's doing and what she's done today to alert us all to it.
And an excellent presentation.
And an excellent presentation.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And I do hope that we can take some of your requests to our club council when we've established who they are. And perhaps for one of our future projects, we can donate some money to your cause. I think that would be great. I see some nodding heads, so I think that might well go down well with the club.
Thank you very much.
So a round of applause, I think. One last round of applause for Sue. And after which, if you could grab your glasses one last time and, as usual, drink to Rotary and peace the world over. You did have a cup.
You did have a cup.
You did have a cup. Rotary and peace the world over.
Rotary and peace the world over.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Rotary. That was lovely.
Take us home.
Please do. Thank you, ladies and gents. I will end the meeting now. Bye-bye.
Bye, David.
See you soon. Bye. Thanks for coming.